And thank you for joining us. I'm Wilson Stribling. Welcome to part 3 of a special 4-part series on At Issue. We're just over a week away from the August 6th primaries, when Mississippians will go to the polls to choose which candidate will represent each party on the November ballot. All 8 statewide offices are up for grabs this year, and At Issue is taking a closer look at some of the candidates. At Issue tonight, Republicans running for governor. There are 3 candidates on the Republican ticket: Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves of Flowood, former Supreme Court Chief Justice Bill Waller Jr. of Jackson, and State Representative Robert Foster of Hernando. Campaign finance reports from the Secretary of State's office show Reeves with more campaign cash than any candidate running for governor in Mississippi. As of July 10th, Reeves had more than $5.8 million in his campaign fund. His campaign did not respond to multiple requests for an interview with At Issue, but you can learn more about Reeves and the other candidates online at mpbonline.org/election. It's MPB's election website aimed at informing Mississippians about the elections and the candidates running for statewide office. Bill Waller Jr. raised the second largest amount of money among the Republican candidates. Earlier this month, he reported about $373,000 on hand. Having served 21 years on the bench, the former Chief Justice of the state's High Court says he wants the job his father held from 1972 to 1976. Waller tells At Issue producer Ashley Norwood that education and revamping the State Department of Education top his list of priorities.
What's happening now that concerns you most?
Well, there's several things. First and foremost is education, and 90% of our children are educated in the public schools, and the teacher pay raise, it was an election year pay raise. They went 4 years, didn't move us out of our last spot as the lowest paid in the nation. Now, what makes that critical now is we're experiencing a teacher shortage statewide, 1,000. And for an example, I had a teacher town hall in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, which is one of the most desirable. It's one of the best schools in the state, one of the most desirable locations to live, one of the best supported public schools in the state. And the principal told me that she had 3 positions that she never could fill and had to move those students in other classes. Well, the complication of that is that makes the classes larger, which puts additional stress on the teachers and prolongs the whole experience when there's testing that has to be done or whatever that has to be done. So that's not a good situation. We want to make sure we've got teacher-student ratios that are compatible with good education practices. I was in Collins, Mississippi today and went to the superintendent's office, and they had, I think, 4 positions that they couldn't fill this year. So we've got more on the way. So my commitment to the people is I'm going to do whatever I can do every year till we get up to the southeastern average. I think that's the minimum we can do. The teacher pay is a state responsibility, and we just need to take care of it. The other piece of that is I think I would like to have a commission study the whole education system. I think we need to rework the Department of Education. I think that the vocational track or the career track needs to be integrated into our education system, and there's just a total disconnect now. We need to make sure that we've got quality vocational career opportunities for our students that don't wish to go to college. Right now, the whole curriculum is dedicated to a college preparation course. You have spotted areas where there's vocational training, but it's not a major area of assessment, and our schools, frankly, because of the assessment tests, are focusing on things other than vocational training, and I think it's impacting the workforce. I think it's impacting the population drain that we have. I think it's impacting the difficulty that many employers have today in finding skilled employees, and I think we need to drill down into that. So we need to change that. We need to look at the assessment process that we have that's shutting classes down. It's very expensive. These assessment tests was $110 million, which we sure could have used for teacher pay. And I think there's off-the-shelf models that provide us accountability and assessment that don't shut schools down. We've got to get back to writing, the basic writing. The assessment tests are done on computers. We need basic writing skills. The cursive writing needs to be back in the schools. So I would like to work primarily initially on teacher pay and then work into a process or a blue ribbon committee to look at revamping Department of Education and resetting the process for the future. I'd like to see Mississippi reform the Medicaid. I'd like to move that level up to people that are part-time earners or 138% of the poverty level. I'd like to require that they have a skin in the game, so to speak. They make small policy payments, that there's co-pays, that we want to incentivize people to participate in the system, but we don't want to discourage that by losing the benefits if you make a little bit of money. So what's at stake is that right now in Mississippi we've got 31 hospitals in danger of closing for lack of funding, for lack of mostly for uncompensated emergency room care, over $600 million. And so Mike Pence, when he was governor of Indiana, participated in the Healthy Indiana plan that does just those things. It has good conservative principles for the participants. There's no state money involved. Arkansas, the closest state to us that recently did that, was very successful in implementing that. For Mississippi, that'd be $1 billion a year. I think this would help stabilize our hospitals, all of which have been downgraded by Moody's, largely because of lack of financial ability. So I want Mississippi to be healthy, and I want our hospitals to be healthy. You can't have a healthy community without a hospital located within easy driving distance. And so the third thing would be the infrastructure. The plan that was adopted in a special session is simply inadequate to meet the great needs that we have in this state. We've got, on a state level, we've got 7 bridges closed. We've got 283 that are posted. We've got another 1,900 or so that need repairs. So we've got some big issues that we need a major highway program like we had in '87. We've got to fix the bridges. We've got to stabilize our roads, and we need to look at some new coverage. So I'm interested in advancing the cause. The other thing the special session didn't do, it leaves out-of-state motorists. I think they should pay their fair share. Right now, they don't pay anything under that revenue scheme that they adopted. So, so those are my 3 primary parts of my platform: education, workforce training, career training, hospitals, healthcare, and finally roads and infrastructure.
Your campaign slogan, the conservative Republican who can win in November. What does that mean?
Well, you've got a Republican House of Representatives in Mississippi, majority. You've got a Republican Senate. Right now you have a Republican president. I think the practicalities are, I think, Mississippi dealing in the modern governmental marketplace, if you will, I think that is just a natural. I think that's what you need in Mississippi to move ahead. So I'm pragmatic, I'm conservative, but I want to make some things happen. I want to move Mississippi along. And I think that right now under our present political environment, that would be the best thing for Mississippi, and it would allow us to, I want to work with everybody, but I think the reality is it's a Republican state right now, and I think the governor needs to be a Republican for that reason.
Robert Foster, a first-term state representative, reported raising just over $7,000. Foster says he's been running an agritourism farm in his hometown of Hernando for 14 years. He says his limited political experience and extensive background in business give him a better direction for solving some of Mississippi's issues.
I know what needs to be done to help in education. It is just to simply get back to actually changing what an education is. And education is so much more than a 4-year professional degree. That's one form of education. And it's important. We need doctors and lawyers and teachers and professional people. But there's not a ton of jobs for those positions. There's a lot of need for people that are educated and skilled labor. And when we educate them, we empower them to be on their own and to be not relying on government assistance the rest of their lives. The other thing that I think I understand better than anybody else in this race is how to get our economy growing, and our tax structure is one of the biggest things that holds back Mississippi. We have one of the worst ranked tax structures in the United States of America. In the latest Tax Foundation rankings, we were ranked 31 of 50. 50 being the worst, 1 being the best for business friendliness tax structure. And what that means is that when a business looks at a state, They're looking at a lot of things. They're looking at location, which we have. We have one of the greatest locations. We're centrally located. We have the Tom Bigby in the northeast, a huge interstate crossroads in the northwest, a tremendous amount of commerce potential on the Mississippi River with the ports that we have in Vicksburg and other areas, and then we have some great ports on the Gulf Coast. So we have the location, and we have a lot of very hard-working, God-fearing people that just need an opportunity. What businesses are then looking at as one of the final pieces is, what are the taxes like? What is the infrastructure like? Our infrastructure is crumbling, and our tax structure is ranked one of the worst 20 in the entire United States. And so I look at states around us that are doing things much better. I looked at states like Tennessee, Texas, and Florida as 3 good examples of states that have very fast-growing economies, where they still have a lot of poverty in those states in a lot of places, but they are growing economically, and they're bringing those people up with them because they have job opportunities around them that we simply don't have in Mississippi. And I look at their tax structure, and their tax structures all have a lot of similarity. They don't have a personal income tax. We have a personal income tax in Mississippi, and the reason why I think that this is hurting us, multiple reasons. One, when people become successful in small business in Mississippi, a lot of them end up leaving because the personal income tax hits them at 5% of their income. And when they become successful, that starts to add up to a tremendous amount of money. So they move and relocate their business headquarters into Tennessee, Texas, or Florida, taking a lot of the jobs, especially the corporate jobs, the regional jobs, those good paying jobs with them. And they also take all that wealth with them. And why that's such a major issue is because when somebody lives in a community and they're wealthy, they're going to invest in that community in most cases. They're going to invest in a restaurant down the street, in a small business up the road. They're going to put that money into an area around them where they can watch their money work and watch it give them a return. They're not going to do that once they leave the area for the most part. So we're losing a lot of wealth that way too, and that we're running them out of our state into states with more competitive tax structures. And the other thing that I think is important for people to look at is the fact that we've got a very small percentage of people actually paying a personal income tax. There's a lot of people that are running cash businesses that are not reporting their income. There's a lot of people that are in poverty in Mississippi that don't pay income tax, but they use the roads every day, they use the schools, the health departments, all of the services that we lack in actually providing them with good services in because we never have enough money to take care of. So it's kind of a chicken and egg scenario. Is it better to have a flat or fair tax structure, use tax structure like Tennessee, Texas, and Florida have, that everybody helps pay in a little more for? Those 3 states have a little bit higher gas tax, a little bit higher sales tax. But everybody in the economy, everybody, whether they're selling drugs on the street corner, whether they're passing through as a tourist, whether they're a working person, or whether they're living, with the federal subsidies every month, they are all contributing. The more they drive, the more they pay at the pump. The more they buy, the more they pay. It's not going to hurt the poor like people say it will, because they're actually being hurt the worst in a state like Mississippi because we have no resources for them. We have no good educational system. We have no good infrastructure to attract businesses to hopefully give them a job to get them out of government dependency. So it's a repetitive cycle and over. And so I say we need to repeal the personal income tax. We need to phase it out over a period of 8 to 10 years. And over that period of time, we need to have a conversation about raising the gas tax slightly and the sales tax to replace that revenue with a better, more business-friendly stream of revenue that's based off of usage. So sales tax, gas tax. The more you buy, the more you buy, the more you pay. The more you drive, the more you pay. It's a fairer way to do it, and it's better for building an economy over a long period. And so that's the types of things that I have an understanding of that I think really nobody else in this race really quite grasps. And I think that's what we've been missing for so long in Mississippi, is just a direction. We want to get from point A to point B, and I do that in my business all the time. I look at things and I say, how do I get from here to here? And there's steps you have to take, and there has to be a plan. And we just really don't have an economic plan in Mississippi. Nobody else has really proposed how do we get a growth in our economy that will be long term, not just a temporary infusion of let's borrow $200 million and fix a few bridges. That's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet when it doesn't fix the long-term problem. What we need is to have long-term growth in the economy. We need to be able to keep our businesses here in Mississippi when they become successful so they'll grow here. And we need people that are successful, that are young professionals, to want to stay here and have jobs available for them so they're not leaving our state. So those are the types of things that I think I bring to the table.
So let's get straight to the point with views from both sides of the aisle. Brandon Jones is an attorney and former Democratic member of the House. Austin Barber is a national Republican strategist and founder of the Clearwater Group. Brandon, Austin, good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Those two men and Lieutenant Governor Reeves all participated in a debate earlier this week. I'd like to hear your thoughts on how they performed, Austin.
Listen, I think I should first say we've always done this with people that are our friends or we've worked with or clients. You know, Tate Reeves is a guy who's been a friend of mine for a long time. I'm a donor to Tate Reeves, so I'm a little biased there, but I can put my biases behind us so we can have an honest conversation here.
We'll be the judge of that.
We'll be the judge of that, yeah. You know what? America will be the judge of that, or at least Mississippi. Look, I think they all had their ups and downs. Each of them had their own bars that they had to overcome, expectations that were coming in to the debate. You know, Tate Reeves' expectations were pretty high. Bill Waller's expectations were pretty high. Robert Foster's expectations were pretty low. I'm going to start with Robert Foster because I think he did a really good job. I think he did a really good job in that interview that we just saw. Look, the guy has a mountain of a hill to climb. He has not raised very much money. He's probably been pretty much a regional, or I will say one county kind of candidate, but it's just tough when you don't have the money.
Or the name recognition.
Or the name recognition, which he has gotten a big boost in that. From the issue with the Billy Graham rule and his refusal to do an interview one-on-one in a car in a room with a female reporter, and he's gotten a lot of people who agree with him on that,
including Tate Reeves and Bill Waller,
including Reeves and Bill Waller. So I think that Robert Foster, I don't think he's going to make the runoff. I don't think he's going to be the next governor, but I think the guy's got a future. He's really been impressive. I got to talk about Waller and Reeves real quick. I think Tate Reeves did really well. I think Tate Reeves clearly showed that of these three candidates, he is the most conservative, but he's the most conservative who has the track record to prove, here's what I did on education or taxes, and here's why it was successful for our state, and this is what I'll continue to do as governor. He clearly had that to show. And I think Bill Waller probably struggled the most in the debate. I think we have to be honest here. It's not something that he's probably done in a really long time, but he has an impressive record. And, he's just not as conservative as Tate Reeves, and he's just not as conservative as Robert Foster, but he still has, a big percentage of the vote that's for him. And we'll have to see how this all works out as we move towards primary election day in just a few days.
And Brandon, you won't be voting for any one of these three guys, but we still like your thoughts on how they performed.
That's all true, Wilson. All right, look, I thought from a cosmetic standpoint, Austin sized it up pretty well. I was surprised that we did not get more out of Chief Justice Waller. I think that this was an important moment for him. He's running an insurgent campaign against someone with a 10-to-1 cash advantage, and I felt like it was an opportunity to really distinguish himself, and I don't think that happened. I'm always a little bit surprised when a candidate at that level doesn't appear to be prepared for questions that you would expect. On the other hand, for a guy who has a ridiculously nonsensical social media presence, and who shot to all of our minds by virtue of saying that he wouldn't do an interview with a woman, I had no expectations for this Robert Foster guy, and I thought he sounded pretty good. Both in tonight's interview and earlier this week, he is the only person that talked extensively about poor people. Now, his opportunities may not have gotten there, but we are a state with a ton of poor people. And he has said that several times. He even said tonight, we don't have a good educational support system. We don't have a good health care system. And our infrastructure system is like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Well, this is a person who has served in that legislature and seen firsthand that Republican ideas are not working. He's trying to do something different. He was saying it in a way that I thought was good. And he's an attractive guy. He talks really well. He was thoughtful in his answers. So that surprised me. Lieutenant Governor Reeves, and I've said this to Austin earlier today, I was just surprised that he didn't have more of a fastball. I totally agree. He is in the catbird seat here. He really just had to get through this without making a mistake. I think as far as Republican voters go in Mississippi, mission accomplished. I was just surprised that it wasn't more dynamic, maybe a little bit more substantive. I thought the other night in the debate it was kind of low on substance. He did a good job of fact-checking Waller a couple of times on what the cost would be for some of the proposals. But after 16 years in state government, It's just a strong dynamic to go from Governor Phil Bryant, who's pretty good in these settings, to a person who's just not quite there on that.
Yeah, well, Tate's not Phil. They have their own strengths, and Phil's ability to be a wonderful, one of the best in the last generation, retail politician, can talk in front of any group, glad hand. He's really good at that. But Tate is really good at policy. He's a brilliant guy, and I thought he was really good the last half of the debate when it just seemed to me he got way more comfortable, was very much at ease. I thought he had the line of the night when when they were talking about kids with special needs kids and the education voucher fund that's been set up to help get these kids into school district schools that are better suited for them. And he said, and he told the story of an African American lady who came to him and said, "You know what? I'm a Democrat, but I'm voting for Tate Reeves because he cares about my child." And I thought it was a very powerful line. It's not something that Tate usually does to sort of come up with these kinds of. It was really, really good. And I want to say this just real quick. I think Tate Reeves came into the debate as the favorite to be the Republican nominee for governor against Jim Hood. And there's no question he left the debate as the favorite to be the Republican nominee against Jim Hood.
I was just going to say, for a person who has kind of struggled on the personality test and isn't thought of as being a warm person or somebody who has a whole lot of those personal touch stories, I agree with you. Injecting that into the conversation on debate night was not bad for him.
Foster may disagree. I'm sorry, Wilson, but Robert Foster may disagree with you on him that he's against things that the Republican legislature has done while he's in there. Because he's voted for probably most of them.
I think his appraisal, though, is apt. And I think his appraisal of where we stand right now is going to be very similar to what you hear from Attorney General Hood.
Brandon, as the Democrat in the room, did you find interesting anything that any of those three candidates had to say in the debate or in the interviews tonight about education?
Well, you heard both Chief Justice Waller and Representative Foster say that if given the opportunity, they would seek to raise teacher pay up to the southeastern average, which would be $40,000, give or take, and would represent about a $5,000 increase from where we are now. That would be significant, and I know teachers across the state were pleased to hear that. So I thought that was interesting. That was a break in policy between where they stood and where Lieutenant Governor Reeves stood. And then you also heard both of them talk about classroom testing and how that seems to be an overemphasis within our current system. I wasn't really sure if I heard a proposed alternative to some of what was going on from either one of the challengers, but I think
flashcards.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm joking.
But those were the two places that I heard where education was mentioned. I think it would have been a good time for a more robust debate on vouchers, because that's what Tate Reeves was talking about. And recently, the Government Accountability Office has been fairly critical of our current ESA vouchers program. So has PEER. And so it would have been a good opportunity there again for the challengers to kind of be critical of what's happened in the Senate. But, I think in that sense, there were some missed opportunities, and that may have been one of them.
So listen, let's just get this. Let's get this on the record. Republicans and Democrats and independents and moderates and liberals, they all want teachers to get paid more. There's no question. We may have differing opinions about how much they should get paid and how they should get paid. So it's unfair for anyone to say, well, that Tate Reeves doesn't want teachers to get paid more. I'm not saying you said that. I'm not sure if you said that, but if you did, I'll disagree with you. Because of course, I think Tate Reeves said, I want teachers to get paid more. But more, if you look at his track record as lieutenant governor the last 8 years, teachers are getting paid $8,000 to $10,000 more from the time he became lieutenant governor until the time he's going to walk out of that office. But it is about how much more can we pay them, and how do we pay that to them? And he and Waller clearly had a different opinion. Waller said, this is a crisis. We need to. I think there was a $260 million number that was thrown out there, and if we have to use one-time money, rainy day fund, let's do it. I think Tate Reeves clearly said, I'm not for using one-time money for teacher pay raises, but all three men on the stage. And then probably every person who would be in a Democrat debate would all be for paying teachers more money.
We have less than 2 minutes left, but I want to get to Medicaid, Obamacare, federal money for health care, whatever you want to call it. There was some dissent among the candidates on that issue.
Yeah, it is. Listen, there are certainly troubling times and issues that community hospitals, and this is what this is all about, community hospitals, and when I say it's all about community hospitals, because it's about access to care for poor people, for rich people, for working people, access to care. And a lot of people are having to go to the hospital, whether it's the emergency room or whatever it is, and you want to make sure you've got a strong hospital in your community, whether it's in an urban area or whether it's in a rural area. And that's what is the concern for these elected officials and for the hospitals. Can they keep their doors open? Can they grow and attract more doctors and more specialists? And it's a dollars and cents number. We have to find a solution for how we do that. And clearly, Waller, and I think Foster to a certain degree, wants some kind of expansion of Medicaid, and Tate Reeves has said, no, I'm not going to do this. He likes to refer to it as Obamacare. Technically it is, but it is an expansion of Medicaid because Tate is worried that some big percentage will fall back on the taxpayers that has to come out of the general fund. That's his big concern.
Most disappointing part of the debate. They're all wrong in various ways. This is a huge policy issue for Mississippians. We have too few people that are covered on health care. That affects not only adults, it also affects children. Too many people in Mississippi are using the emergency room as their point of entry to medical care. And when they talk about Medicaid expansion, skinny versus full, it's merely semantics. And we thought by now, with President Obama out of office, people would be smart enough to embrace something that could change the game here.
Once again, the primaries are August 6th. If runoffs are needed, they will be August 27th. The general election is November 5th. Don't forget, you can watch this program plus more from the candidates on our election website, mpbonline.org/election. Good night.